opening statement.
I want to thank all the witnesses. Thank you, Chairwoman Sherrill and Chairman Foster for having this meeting. This is near and dear to my heart. I'm a real estate developer who has developed property dealing with flood maps, residentially, commercially, also dealt with it on the wetland credits, which with regulations that are out of the roof, that 7 years generally to deal with the core, which hopefully we can make some suggestions and improvements. But we're here today to discuss how flooding impacts property owners and the ways that flood hazards and risk are communicated to the public, which is a big part of it. We will examine the science and data that FEMA and the NOAA leverage to generate and distribute federal flood products, the steps being taken to incorporate future flood hazards into these products, and the tools and technologies that exist to help property owners, coastal managers, and community stakeholders better understand and elevate and evaluate their flood risks. Flooding is both the most common and most costly natural disasters in the United States. Floods have caused more than $155 billion in property damage over the last 10 years and nearly 4,000 deaths since 1950. Roughly 75% of all presidential disaster declarations are related in some manner to flooding. In my home state of South Carolina, flooding is an even greater concern. A significant percentage of all South Carolina lands fall within floodplains designated as special flood hazard areas by FEMA. And although it ranks 23rd in total population, South Carolina is ranked 7th among all states in coastal flooding vulnerability, with roughly 400,000 people at risk of inland and coastal flooding throughout our state. Addressing our nation's flood risk requires buy-in from federal, state, local, and community stakeholders, not red tape and useless bureaucracy. Recognizing this, in 2018, Governor McMaster established the South Carolina Floodwater Commission to develop recommendations to alleviate and mitigate flood impacts to the state. Under the leadership of its chairman, retired Major General Tom Mulliken, this commission, unique for our state, took a realistic and a hands-on approach to mitigate flooding in our state. The recommendations offered by this extraordinary committee are the cornerstone of my home state's fight against extreme weather events. In recognition of their achievement, I offer to submit their report for the congressional record as an example to be admired and followed nationally. Yet in spite of these valiant efforts, I recognize that South Carolina alone cannot solve our nation's flooding challenges. That's why I'm pleased to see that FEMA, NOAA, and the USGs are making positive strides in confronting this issue. They are working collaboratively to improve our understanding of flood hazards and risk and how best to communicate these risks to state and local communities, and also the general public, which needs to be informed. I encourage them to continue to improve and expand their interagency coordination to ensure that federal flood products are accurate, reliable, and comprehensible to the communities like those in South Carolina who rely on them for planning, zoning, and land use management. Preparedness is critical to combating the challenges that flooding presents, but proper preparation means taking steps now to improve our resilience to flood hazards and mitigate present and future flood risk. I look forward to learning more today about what FEMA and the NOAA are doing to improve federal flood mapping and how they are leveraging modern technology to gain a more accurate and granular understanding of flood risk and hazards in South Carolina and throughout our nation. Flooding events presents a great challenge, but through collaboration and coordination between all levels of government, community stakeholders, and private sector experts, it's a challenge that we can overcome and we can be successful. I again want to thank the witnesses for taking the time to be here today. Thank you, Chairwoman Sherrill, and I yield back.
Thank you. We are